Alright, welcome back fellow adventurers to the Frog God Games YouTube channel. My name is Ben Barsh, I'm your host god and dungeon master through all of the madness that happens here at Frog God Games. And like on my last video, I put in a little asterisk that just video madness, the rest of it is all Zach Laser. God damn it, Zach is alive and well. Okay, so today I want to continue the D&D Advice series. They're just really fun for me to make. I know a lot of people interact with these videos, so I'm going to keep making them because it seems like a lot of people like them, so why not? And of course, I am not saying that I am the ultimate authority of a D&D game. I've been playing for a very long time, and I've played at a lot of conventions with my home group, with different home groups, with local game stores. I've had a pretty wide variety of D&D experience, so please take my advice or my ideas with a grain of salt. This is going to be a five advice list kind of thing. If some of these don't work for you, just don't use them. But if maybe like one of them works for you, then I have succeeded in my quest to spread Dungeons & Dragons knowledge. So without further ado, let's jump into 5 ways to make your Dungeons & Dragons game more epic. Now, the number 1 tip that I have for you is going to sound incredibly simple, and you'll probably roll your eyes when you hear it, but it is very much real, is talk to your players and get advice from them. Now, this is like one of the easiest ways you can get a very collaborative and amazing home game. I did this actually the other day. I've been playing with my home group for I don't even know how many years at this point. We've done a couple really long campaigns, a lot of shorter campaigns, and we were all sitting around a bonfire the other day, and I just randomly had this moment of inspiration, and I asked them, hey, what can I do to make this game better? Now, I feel like a lot of DMs kind of get into their own head of a vision that they see for the game or the story, and they don't consult the players about it. Or they don't say, hey, are you enjoying this? Is your character enjoying this? Is this where they thought they would be? Is this where you thought you would be? There's a lot of questions that you can kind of ask them to improve the style of the game. Now, this, of course, doesn't work for everyone all the time, but I think this is a pretty blanket, good point of advice where obviously don't ask for like super criticism of like, oh, you don't do voices well enough, or your mapping skills aren't that good, or something. We're just talking about collaborative advice of, hey, we really like going into these dungeon dives, or hey, we really enjoy doing city adventures, but we never do them because we're too busy hopping from dungeon to dungeon. Just kind of get their advice of a path that way you can lead them down, and it just is going to make the whole game better. Everyone's going to start enjoying themselves more. Again, I know that one might seem very simple for a lot of veteran players, but for the new DMs, I would highly recommend taking that point of advice out of any of the rest on the list. Just because sometimes players can be too scared to speak up and say, hey, I don't know if I really love this. My character feels out of place here. Not to say you shouldn't be challenging and pushing your players to explore new adventures, but always come back to that ground zero where everyone is having that fun collaborative experience. Number 2 is very different than number 1, and it is ambience music, or just general ambiance through a speaker that you put in the middle of the table, or maybe you're even awesome, you have a speaker system in your house or something. But this one very much does not work for everyone. This is a kind of thing where I've honestly seen a pretty decent 50-50 split between players, or DMs, whether they like to use it or not. Personally, I'm a giant fan of ambiance music. The most recent adventure that we went on was in a bit of a jungle, and all I did was my friend brought over his speaker, because mine is kind of crappy, so we use his. It's just a little small speaker. It doesn't have to be like a big, I don't know. Do people used to put... I'm a little young for the generation of like shoulder speakers. So it's really simple. All you have to do is grab your phone or grab your computer, have a speaker, or you can even play the music out of your phone, and then YouTube the location, ambiance music, or battle music. So for example, if you're in a jungle ambiance music, and then it'll come up with like an hour-long playlist of the ambiance music that you're listening to. It can be creepy dungeon, you can look for dark forest, you can look for the Arctic, the ocean. Literally, YouTube is one of the most amazing things ever, and it's a really easy way just to immerse your players even more to the setting that you are currently exploring. Or if you're in tavern, look up tavern ambiance hour loop, and it'll come up with literally just like random clanking of mugs, of chairs being pulled out, bartenders sliding mugs down the bar, or people talking. And you can just play that little ambiance, and it just encapsulates the players a little bit more into the world. Now, some people do find this distracting. So again, if it doesn't work for your players, try it out a couple times. If you guys don't like it, just scrap it, don't use it. It's not the biggest deal. This is just more of a fun little tip that can bring a little bit more life to your game. Tip number 3 is probably one of my favorite that I put on this list because, again, I just did it in my recent home game, and we've done it before, but not to this level. So this is mainly for the people who have had long-running campaigns, or perhaps this is like your second or third campaign with your group, and this isn't the first set of characters that the players are playing, okay? So how I made my world is that I don't play in like the Forgotten Realms or the Lost Lands or any other. I have my own home world, right? And you can do this with any world, really. I'm just using mine as the example. So the first campaign we ever played was or the grand scale campaign, other than our old school ones, was our first 5th edition campaign. And they played their characters for like 2 years almost. So almost all of them died towards the end, but they still ended up succeeding the mission that they went on. I won't get into the heavy campaign details, right? So one of my group members was a paladin, and he got sucked into the void by this like Cthulhu-like monster. His character everyone thought he was dead. So they finished out the campaign. Since then, we've had some other little sessions. We're just running modules and stuff. But now we're in another full-blown campaign. And I mentioned my world earlier. That first world that they played the campaign in, they are now playing in this world again, but it's like 200 years later, some odd years later. Or even you can do a prequel before. I'm getting to the tip. I know I'm really dragging this out, but my tip is to bring back old characters as NPCs, and don't warn the characters except the one who used to play that character. So that paladin that got sucked in the void that I talked about earlier 200 years ago, well, it ended up that he was saved by Pelor from the dark abyssal prison that he was set into, and now he's like a celestial, and he works with Pelor as one of his grand champions. So at the end of this recent adventure, that paladin that my buddy played, Solarian showed himself to the players, and they were all just like, "Oh my God, Solarian survived!" And it was just super fun, and it was a great way to introduce some old, warm-hearted nostalgia into your current game without overshadowing the new stuff that you want to cover in your game. So basically, the tip is to bring back old characters as NPCs. Generally, or what I have done in the past and what I did with the Paladin Solarian is to ask my friend Mario, "Hey, I really want to bring back Solarian. What are your thoughts? Can we work on this together to bring him back?" So that way it was a surprise for all the players, and I did his character justice. So I know that one can be a little bit harder to implement like right away next session, but if you have old characters in an old campaign, think about rehashing some of those ideas just to have that little nostalgia kick. There's nothing like breathing a little bit of more life in your campaign if you kind of feel like it's at a standstill or they don't know what quite they're going to do next. Tip number 4 to have a more epic D&D game is a time trial. So a lot of people struggle with making sure their characters are staying down the right path. Or if you write down an adventure or you're running a module or a campaign, they kind of find it hard sometimes for the characters not to get super distracted with other things. And of course, that's okay if you're running a sandbox campaign. But even in a sandbox campaign, it can be a little irritating because you have to prepare so many different things in so many different places. So the tip is to have it be a time trial. So give them the task of what they have to do. Go clear out this dungeon, or go to this temple, or go to this remote island and clear it out of X and Y bad guys, whatever it may be. But give them you have 3 days to do this, or your sponsor will not be pleased with your work, or maybe something even worse happens. Like after 3 days, a portal opens up from the Shadowfell and all these Shadowfell monsters start coming in. It really creates a sense of urgency, and it doesn't allow the players to do one thing, go rest, do one thing, rest. Obviously you should be refilling the dungeon or the area with more monsters because the big bad NPC or antagonist that they're facing off against is probably intelligent in some way. But just having that time trial kind of creates a sense of urgency where they have a mission that they know they have to succeed in this amount of time, and if they don't, then they're probably going to fail. So if you feel like your game is dragging out a little bit, it's going a little too slow, maybe slap on like a 3-day limit of like you have to do this in 3 days or however many days you see fit for whatever you're doing. Now, tip number 5, this one again is going to be one that can easily be inserted. I know a couple of these are more long-term or harder to implement, like bringing back NPCs or time trials. But the one that I can't stress enough is don't worry about the rules as much. Now, I know a lot of people really love getting into the nitty gritty of the rules, and if your group is like that, great. Do it. That'd be awesome. But again, if you feel like your campaign's going a little sluggish, combat's moving too slowly, even exploration is getting bogged down by how many times you have to roll a d20 or do a percentile check, maybe just don't worry about the rules as much. And just if a player wants to do something fun, just say, okay, how do you want to do this? And then they describe to you how they want to investigate that. And then you either just kind of like let them succeed or fail based on their character's backstory instead of having to roll the dice a million times. Now, this definitely has its points. I think in a combat version of this rule, of not worrying about the rules, is very much like if you're not 100% sure on how a certain part of the combat works, maybe just make up a rule real quick and then check the book afterwards. If you're constantly pulling out the rule books to check in the middle of a combat, then it's going to bog it down and it's going to make it last a long time. And then the players who the rule doesn't even apply to them, maybe like you're looking up spellcasting rules, the fighter is just going to be like, I'm bored. So, you know, again, this certainly has its time and place, but in certain times, perhaps just let the rule of cool out, overcome the actual rules as written, or maybe just make up your rules as intended. Say, I think the rule should be like this. Let's just do it for our group this way. Because the beautiful part about Dungeons and Dragons in a tabletop RPG is that there is no correct way to play it. It's just however your group wants to play it. You're not put into this box that you are in like a MMORPG on a video game where you physically cannot go past the limits or do something different than what your character has ability-wise. The beautiful part about MMOs is you can completely tailor it to your group, and overall the best tip that I can give you is talk to your players and just have fun, have a collaborative experience where you're all enjoying and working towards a similar goal. And that is going to be it for me today, guys. If you are enjoying the D&D advice kind of stuff or the conversational videos that I'm having on the channel, please let me know in the comments and like the video if you enjoyed. Subscribe for more content because we are uploading a ton of stuff. It's usually at least 2 videos a week. That's like the minimum that we're doing, Mondays and Wednesdays. So please subscribe. It helps me. It grows the community, and overall, it's a great thing. It's just the big red button. If you scroll down, click subscribe. Also, if I missed anything, please let me know in the comments for those experienced players out there so we can help out all of the new people or even veteran players who just need a little bit of breath of life into their games. That is all for me today. Have a magical day. Be kind to each other and keep going on adventures worth winning.